Salam alaikum. It's Saturday. I've scheduled a couple of pretty heavy, serious lessons, but then I thought I'd stop and give you something um, like a treat. I listened to your comments, and one of the comments was, "Oh, I so loved your story about meeting the lady in the shop, uh, the Christian fundamentalist lady." And she said she loved the way I told the story because she got entertained for a little bit. And that reminds me of one of my greatest teachers in Egypt. She was expert Arabic, published books, etc. And she would always put in between some few pages a little story, tiny bit of maybe a poem or something light. And I would ask her, why do you do that? It seems so odd to see an Arabic grammar book with such. And she said, oh, you have to give the students a bit of fun and relaxation. When they're doing something that's a little bit challenging, it's a good thing for them to get a little lift. So I loved her. She's not able to be communicated with right about now. I guess she was a little bit too intelligent. But anyway, I wrote something in response to a story on Facebook. And, I'm on this thread of Irish everything. And so they send me, sometimes I'm shocked by what they send me. Today they sent me a man, an old man, he looked 90, and he was making wooden harps. And he said he was always fascinated by harps, and he just is good with wood. So he continues making these harps. And it struck me with a childhood memory. So that's what I'm going to read to you now. And I'm holding it. You can see it on my Facebook page if you want to see it. It's in the Irish News from County Tyrone. And here is my, it's not a reply, it's a memory. True story. When I was a young girl, about the age of 9, I told my mom I wanted to learn to play the harp. I liked the look and sound of it. I remember this. I remember it was in my bedroom. I remember it exactly. She flatly refused, saying, there's a piano and an organ downstairs in the front room. You can take lessons on those. I did as she asked, but after a couple of years, I quit. My heart just wasn't in it. My passion for reading took over and stayed, landing me in Egypt at the age of 40, seeking Islamic knowledge and the Arabic language. Every time I see a harp, I remember. Yet, music was not to be my destiny, which was written for me before I was born. Now, I thought I had put a little addition to this, but I guess I didn't. I guess I just sent it to some friends on WhatsApp with the addition, but here's the addition. As I look back now, I view this as some sort of a contest that I observed from my earliest years between my parents. And this was a subtle form of racism, tribalism. You see, my dad was full Irish, and his mom had 13 children, and she was a force to be reckoned with. My mom's side was only half Irish, and the other half was Italian. And my grandma, my nonna, from my mom's side, never left the kitchen. She hardly ever spoke. She was a complete Italian nonna and then wife and then mother who really didn't say much, but she would just create this food that was overwhelmingly delicious. My mom tells me as a child that her mom never ever left the house without her husband. Never. Now, my dad's mom with the 13 children had When I say this, it's like yesterday. She had, what would you call it? A routine. That after she had the 13 children, she decided that she was going to go every Saturday on the bus alone into downtown Boston. It was called Bailey's Ice Cream Store. And Bailey's was very chic. You know, they had the fancy marble tabletops and the, you know, those little chairs that you can barely sit in. They looked like some sort of a French bistro chair, and they were gold. And they did all this to attract women, of course, to make them feel special. So my grandma lived in a close suburb to Boston. It was called Somerville, where my dad was raised, you know, like 6 miles out of Boston on the western side. And she just was a force to be reckoned with. My grandma Rosie was the antithesis of my nonna Julia. And I have to make another video about this, about these characters in my life, because they're almost like a history book. So she would take the bus alone. And she always had a cane because she was heavy with weak knees. And off she went downtown Boston, sat there like a little princess for an hour, eating her butterscotch sundae. And then she would promptly return on the bus, and she was always fully decked out in beautiful, you know, very understated, almost tailored clothes, with her big black Oxford shoes, tied shoes, never a drop of makeup on this woman, but always a lovely hat. She was something else. 13 children. Would wake for Mass every single morning while the family was sleeping and climb the hill to pray what we would call Fajr, and they called it the early prayer in the morning. There's so many similarities with Catholics in so many ways. So contrast that to Nonna Julia, who never left the house without her husband. Well, as I told you before, I think I mentioned they won't tell me where my Italian grandfather came from. No one wants to disclose it. Which city, which province. I don't know why. Probably some form of, so all I can say is some form of Sicilian mafia connection. Because no matter how hard I try and how many people in the family I ask, probably know that I will go delving into things as I did with my papa, who married that Italian girl. He was Irish. So he didn't get a full Irish progeny, even though he came over from Ireland. He had a plan, and his plan was that he's going to do something in Boston. Now, I don't remember. I was too young to talk to him. I think I started to talk to my papa when I was like 9. And then when I was perhaps 13, he died. But I think I mentioned to you before, he was the vice president of the International Longshoremen's Union in the Port of Boston for 40 years. And he was a very slight, slim, white, strawberry blonde hair, big blue eyes. The last person that would be a labor union organizer. But remember, he never actually lifted anything. He did the back rooms. And he was always, I don't know, should I say it? Should I come out and say it? He was mafioso. He had to be. The head of the docks for 40 years. What do you mean? Why are you even wondering about this? So that's my Danny Donovan, Friends of President Kennedy side that I got, curiously enough, from my mother, whose mother was Giulia Portella, born and raised in East Boston, the Italian enclave. Let's go to Dad. I always tell people I have bad genes. I have Italian mafia on one side and Irish mafia on the other side. They're very similar, by the way. But my dad's was so elite. You know, that's how they were. They called them the late lace curtain Irish, Kennedy-esque. You know, very close to the Pope and Vatican and all that kind of, be careful. Say good or don't speak. Yes, I'm trying. But he was friends with all the Pauls in Boston and close friends with the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, because he was another full Irishman. And so, which side did I prefer? This could lead to a schizophrenic type of a personality, which of course I do have, because on the one side I have Nana Julia, who made the best Italian food, hardly spoke, just sweet kisses now and then, and no pressure. You walked in that house, you felt free. Everything was free in that house. There was no push to perform like in my dad's family. You know, you had to perform. When you went to visit him, or that part of the side of the family, on Sunday, you would be called upon to sing a song, play the piano, recite a poem, and of course pray, because they prayed a lot. So I took my mom's Italian part to be what would I consider to be easy and fun. Which is why when my dad proposed to my mom, his mom did not want him to marry her. She did not like my mom. And the only thing that I got for info was, they're not like us. They're not like us, is how the story went. And I remember hearing that as a child and saying, yeah, you're not fun. Dad's side is just fun and great Italian food. Now, my grandma had great American food, or let's say, you know, the Irish type, meat and potatoes, and the best pies. I mean, made with lard. My mom would say, I don't know why they tell me to use lard, because they say it makes a flaky crust. But my mom would say, I think it's made from pig fat. So there's the clue. There's the clue. You know that the Muslims occupied the island of Sicily for 200 years. Could my Papa Dominic originate in Sicily? Well, if you saw my Papa Dan, my grandfather on my mom's side, he spent his life at the dog track and the racetrack. And my mom said she remembers the bookies coming to the house to place their bets. So on the one side, my mom's side, we have this pseudo, I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but there was definitely, you could feel the trend going into this side of Italian overwhelming the Irish side. Remember, I told you Papa was Irish. But he had a plan. They called him Dapper Dan. He was extremely handsome. If you ever saw the film Peaky Blinders, that's the story of my Papa's life. Seriously. So, I'm not saying with the guns, though. I wasn't there. I didn't see any murders or anything. But the persona of the character in Peaky Blinders was similar to my Papa Dan. You know, you used to see his picture hanging in JFK Library in Boston. And I have pictures of him with JFK sitting together, shoulder to shoulder. I used to be impressed by that. When I didn't know any better, you know, when you're young, you don't think of what we might call dirty politics and old boy networks, and you don't think of that stuff. So that was my mom's side. Pseudo Irish Italian. On my dad's side, you have the fat cats. Tip O'Neill, Speaker of the House for longer than any other person. I think it was 40 years or something like this. My dad's side, it wasn't bookies and racetracks, it was yacht clubs and golf courses and just obviously the opposite of my mom's side. So, how did I feel about my dad's side? Well, it was very intellectual, I might say. They were well read and they were extremely good looking people, more than my mom's side. My mom was a beautiful Ava Gardner replica, but in general, my dad's side had all of the beautiful women, his sisters, and two became nuns, and very handsome men. I should post a picture. Not that matters. It doesn't matter what you look like. I hope my students hear that and believe me when I tell you it's the last thing that matters. But what does matter is the older you get, the more you think about the past. And I always heard that, and I used to wonder, well, what's the big deal about the past? You know, memories, it's just because you're lonely and you don't have any life, so you think about memories. Well, partly because the older you get, you don't go out as much. You're certainly not out there, so to speak, as when you were younger. So maybe that's benefiting my students with the new curriculum, because it's all connected, you know. So remember, the next couple of lessons planned for today are a little bit heavy. So I hope that you've enjoyed this walk down memory lane, which is the title of some of this that I do. And if you prompt me, I will perhaps do more. But I'm here to teach you Quran and Sunnah, which I will. 2 more lessons coming up today, which I enjoy doing because they're just so true. What can I say? The words of Allah, nothing will hit you like the words of Allah. And when you learn Arabic, then you're really going to know, half of Italian language is Arabic now. They don't want to talk about it. But I'll tell you, I'll give you the news. I'll give you the true news. Okay? Inshallah. See you soon, maybe after 3 hours. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.